Welcome to Green Bay, Wisconsin, situated at the Brown County Courthouse, where the recent scene of a woman attacking her own attorney reveals her conviction for the murder and dismemberment of her ex-boyfriend. Taylor Shabusness, 25, faced charges including homicide, third-degree sexual abuse, and mutilating a corpse in the February 2022 killing of her former partner, 24-year-old Shad Therian. The trial unfolded in two phases. The first confirming her guilt in the acts against Therian, while the second assessed her mental state. Despite the defense's assertion of her suffering from a mental ailment during the crime, the jury rejected this claim. Back in February 2022, the victim's mother made a gruesome discovery in her Stony Brook Lane house, her son's head in a bucket in the basement. This horrifying encounter marked the beginning of a tragic day. Inside, a green bucket concealed by a shower towel lay the severed head of her 24-year-old son. Law enforcement later discovered Therian's lifeless body and removed organs from her basement. The trial this week starkly depicted the chilling nature of the murder, with Taylor standing trial for the killing. Taylor and the victim had a history dating back to middle school and were engaged in a sexual relationship, as she disclosed to law enforcement. On the day of Therian's demise, they had consumed prescription drugs and methamphetamines. As per a criminal complaint filed by prosecutors, Taylor picked up the victim around 9:30 p.m. on February 21, 2022. A mutual friend joined them before they proceeded to an apartment where the trio smoked marijuana. Taylor admitted to police that they also used methamphetamine and injected trazodone. Subsequently, she spent the day at his mother's residence while the mother was absent. Reportedly, Therian lay face down on the bed as Taylor repeatedly choked him, despite him coughing blood and turning purple. Around 2:30 a.m., the victim's mother was awakened by a knock at her front door. Upon checking the basement for Therian and not finding him, she returned upstairs, discovering the bucket containing part of her son's remains. Her boyfriend, Steve Hendricks, immediately dialed 911. Body camera footage from responding officers captured the search of the basement and the securing of the crime scene upon confirming the presence of a human head in the bucket. Cooperating with the authorities, Therian's mother disclosed that her son was last seen with Taylor. They swiftly located Taylor at an Eastman Avenue apartment complex, her arrest captured on police body camera and presented as evidence. This wasn't Taylor's first encounter with the law. She had prior convictions for unrelated charges of fleeing, escaping, and obstructing a police officer, leading to a 3-month jail sentence in January 2022. Throughout the trial, despite the gruesome details of the murder, Taylor was observed smirking on several occasions. At one point, she even attacked her own lawyer, requiring a deputy to intervene and wrestle her to the courtroom floor. Let's view the clip. As previously noted, the trial's second phase focused on Taylor's mental state. Initially, her former attorney entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Forensic psychologist Dr. Diane Litton provided insights into this aspect.
My opinion is that she qualifies for the not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. My opinions are that she was not responsible because of a mental disease.
Previously, a court-appointed physician determined her fit for trial. Taylor's attorney had revealed her past bipolar diagnosis and ongoing mental health treatment since 7th grade. However, Brown County Circuit Court Judge Thomas Walsh ruled in March that Taylor was competent for trial. During sentencing, the jury deliberated for just 30 minutes before convicting her on all counts: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and third-degree sexual assault in Therian's death. Wisconsin's legal framework prohibited the death penalty, resulting in a life sentence for Taylor. As the verdict was delivered, she remained motionless, similar to any emotionless convicted felon.
It was a horrific crime. I am struck by the casualness in which it was committed, the absolute disregard for human life.
This is the Jefferson County District Court, where Acting United States Attorney Daniel P. Bubar and Special Agent in Charge Raymond Villanueva for HSI's Washington, D.C. field office announced the life sentence of convicted murderer Abel Gallegos. Gallegos faced multiple charges, including murder, conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree kidnapping, retaliation against a witness, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with evidence. The tragic event unfolded in November 2019 when 28-year-old Simone Duran was kidnapped and killed in Jefferson County, Colorado. Gallegos attempted to dispose of Duran's body by setting it on fire, but his attempt failed and a hiker discovered her remains. The motive behind Duran's kidnapping and murder seemed to be retaliation, as she had identified a gang member, Alonzo Quintana, in a lineup following an earlier murder investigation in Adams County in 2018. Throughout the trial, the prosecution detailed Gallegos' thorough planning of the murder and presented evidence of his history of violent behavior and involvement in gang activity. Conversely, the defense argued that the evidence against Gallegos was conditional, lacking direct links to the murder. They also suggested a possible connection between Duran's involvement in drugs and gang activity and her murder. During the sentencing, Duran's family members shared the deep impact of her loss on their lives. They portrayed her as a loving mother, daughter, and friend with a promising future. While expressing relief that Gallegos was held accountable for her murder, they mourned the irreversible pain caused by her death. The life sentence ensures Gallegos will spend his days in prison. However, his emotionless demeanor suggests an indifference that paints the image of a hardened criminal unaffected by the gravity of his actions.
This is where you will end up, with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison. And it may be symbolic, but I'm going to impose the maximum sentence just because you deserve it.
The judge delivered a verdict of life imprisonment without the chance of parole for Duran's murder, along with an additional 163 years for the other offenses. In the victim impact statement, it was heart-wrenching to hear about Duran's young children, aged 3 and 4, who woke up in the night crying for their mother. The intense absence left by her loss echoes through their innocent pleas, illustrating the enduring impact of this tragic loss on her family, particularly on her vulnerable children.
They miss her and they ask about her every day.
In Tennessee, Spencer Allen Boston made quite a memorable appearance in court. Initially facing charges of weed possession and speeding, Boston took an unconventional turn by choosing to represent himself. While this move isn't entirely uncommon, things quickly escalated as his actions led to charges of disorderly conduct and contempt of court.
Yes, sir. I think it's very unfair, the marijuana law here. I think we the people deserve better because marijuana is a very harmless drug and it's been around for ages, since the 80s and 90s.
During his self-representation, Boston passionately took the floor, aiming to address Tennessee's marijuana laws. He delivered a spirited speech, emphasizing his viewpoint on the state's cannabis regulations. However, the judge didn't entertain Boston's argument. From the judge's perspective, regardless of personal beliefs or opinions, the law stands firm and must be observed without exceptions. In Tennessee, marijuana remained illegal, regardless of Boston's emotional plea for reconsideration.
I've heard that baloney all my life, so don't go any further on that.
Yes, sir.
I don't know whether it's good or bad. All I know is
Yes,
Tennessee still has it against the law. I swore to uphold the laws, and I have to uphold the laws as a judge. It probably is unfair, but I can't change it. You've got to go see the legislature.
The situation took a drastic turn when Boston decided to take a bold step and light up a joint right in the courtroom, catching everyone by surprise. Despite efforts from the court officer to intervene and prevent him from doing so, Boston persisted. Instead of being discouraged, he attempted to continue his speech.
Now, if you want to plead guilty, you can today, but if you want a trial, we can give you a trial.
The courtroom erupted in laughter as observers reacted to Boston's unexpected actions. However, this move didn't yield the intended impact. Instead, it added to Boston's charges, resulting in further allegations of disorderly conduct and contempt of court. What might have been intended as a protest against weed legality ultimately backfired.
Hey! We the people deserve better.
Take it to jail. Take it to jail.
Consequently, the judge, in response to Boston's actions, sentenced him to 10 days of imprisonment. Despite the attempt to advocate for his cause, Boston's decision to light up in court led to severe repercussions. In a Philadelphia courtroom, the trial of suspected rapist Titus Lee unfolded, recounting a vicious crime that occurred in November 2016. Lee faced severe charges, accused of brutally attacking 2 University of North Carolina Wilmington students in their apartment complex. He was charged with 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of first-degree rape, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and first-degree burglary. As per the male victim's testimony, Lee, wearing a mask and armed with a gun, assaulted him and his girlfriend while they were on their apartment porch. He allegedly restrained them in a closet while he raped the female victim, a horrifying ordeal that lasted for hours. Additionally, the victims recounted being forced to drive to an ATM and withdraw money for Lee during the ordeal. Following the attacker's departure, the victims, terrified and deeply traumatized, sought help at the male victim's parents' house in Cherry Grove, South Carolina. 3 weeks later, the assailant was detained in Philadelphia by U.S. Marshals. In court, the jury found Lee guilty on all charges. The judge subsequently sentenced him to over 100 years in prison, delivering justice nearly 5 years after the harrowing incident. Finally, the female victim had the opportunity to deliver her impact statement in court, marking a significant moment in their journey towards closure and justice.
I'd like you to know that the man sitting in that seat over there is responsible for my life being significantly harder than it was ever supposed to be. My innocence is now gone. I found myself harboring feelings of uncertainty and fear just by doing small things like going to the store or meeting a friend for dinner. Things that are supposed to be easier now are hard because I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting a man like him to be behind me.
District Attorney Ben David emphasized the gravity of the situation, stating, "Titus Lee will spend the rest of his life in prison." He highlighted the exceptional nature of the case, acknowledging the rarity of a violent crime of such magnitude where the victim survived to testify. David described the incident as a hate-fueled and prolonged crime spree that was characterized by its disgusting nature. The severity and duration of the crime were deeply troubling, leaving a permanent mark on all involved in the case. The sentencing of 34-year-old Crystal Cardenas in the 3rd Judicial District Court of Las Cruces, New Mexico, marked the conclusion of a horrific case involving the murders of Mario Cabral and Vanessa Rodriguez Mora. Cardenas was found guilty on multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and criminal solicitation. The tragedy, referred to as the Garfield killings, unfolded 4 years prior when a teenage girl woke to discover her mother and her mother's boyfriend slain in their home on March 25, 2018. Investigations revealed a chilling sequence of events. Cardenas and her then-boyfriend, Luis Flores, initially attempted to hire a hitman in a custody battle. When this failed, they took matters into their own hands, ultimately shooting and killing Mario Cabral and Vanessa Rodriguez Mora. The night of the murders, Rodriguez Mora's daughter, hiding in another room, heard the gunshots but believed she was having a bad dream, only to wake up and find the horrifying reality. Upon discovering the tragic scene the following day, she fled to a neighbor's house to alert the authorities. During the trial, the teenager testified, recounting the terrifying experience of hearing the gunshots and then waking to find her mother and Cabral lying in a pool of blood. The girl's testimony vividly captured the trauma and horror she endured, highlighting the tragic aftermath of the senseless violence that shattered her world.
My mom was in the couch, just bleeding from her nose. And then I was like, "Mom, wake up," and she didn't wake up.
The prosecutors and defense lawyer engaged in a vigorous courtroom battle. The district attorney outlined the events of March 25, 2018, as recounted by Mora Rodriguez's daughter. She mentioned watching television with her mom and Cabral before going to bed. Upon hearing loud noises later that night, she sought cover under a blanket, believing it to be a frightening dream. The prosecutors presented evidence and witness accounts to reconstruct the sequence of events. Allegedly, Cardenas and Flores surveilled Cabral's residence, waiting for them to sleep before the incident shortly after midnight. According to the prosecution, Flores entered the house, injuring Cabral and Mora Rodriguez. The prosecutor detailed specific actions, indicating a methodically planned attack. Authorities revealed Cardenas's initial attempt to hire someone named Edward Alonzo for a particular task. Alonzo provided insights into the scheme, but requested his identity to remain concealed when testifying in court.
She had told me that if I wasn't able to finish the job, or for some reason it wasn't able to get done when it was going to get done.
Regarding the motive, prosecutors claimed that Cardenas desired the house Cabral acquired from a significant legal settlement when they first met. Following their separation, Cabral transferred the property to their daughter. Prosecutors argued that Cardenas, facing financial difficulties and at risk of losing her own home, sought to inherit Cabral's residence to raise their daughter if he passed away. However, Cardenas's lawyer, Todd Holmes, contested this narrative. He suggested a different theory, proposing that the couple might have been targeted in a drug cartel-related incident. Holmes highlighted the absence of physical evidence, such as DNA or fingerprints, linking Flores or Cardenas to the location during the shooting. Additionally, he raised doubts about the reliability of a critical witness presented by the state, the individual who claimed Cardenas hired him to harm her ex-boyfriend. Throughout the trial, the defendant maintained her innocence.
I was shocked. I was just shocked. I was shocked. I didn't believe it.
How was your mood?
Excuse me?
How was your mood about learning that information?
I started crying.
The prosecutor strongly contested the suggestion put forth by Cardenas's lawyer regarding the involvement of a drug cartel in the deaths of Cabral and Mora Rodriguez. Referring to the absence of supporting testimony for this theory, the prosecutor emphasized, "Have you heard a single word of that? Nothing shows that because it's made up. It's there to confuse you." This was intended to dismiss the theory as baseless and aimed at creating confusion rather than presenting factual evidence.
We find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder.
After 3 hours of deliberation following the closing arguments, the jury rendered their decision. Crystal Cardenas was found guilty of 1 count of first-degree murder, 1 count of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and 1 count of criminal solicitation. However, the jury rejected a 4th charge of second-degree murder. Judge Conrad Perea of the 3rd Judicial District Court sentenced Cardenas to a combined 54 years in prison. While the charge of capital murder mandated a life sentence, Cardenas could be eligible for a parole hearing after serving several decades behind bars. At Hampton Superior Court, the accused awaits Judge Constance M. Sweeney's final judgment. Back in 2015, Lee Rios, a well-known member of the Latin Kings gang, faced trial for the murder of 18-year-old Kenneth Lopez in Springfield, Massachusetts. Prosecutors alleged that despite their friendship, Rios had a motive to kill Lopez due to a dispute between them. Post the shooting, Rios boasted about the act to his fellow gang members, which led to his arrest and subsequent murder charges. The prosecution emphasized Rios's lack of remorse, pointing to his history of violence and gang involvement. They presented compelling evidence suggesting Rios meticulously planned the murder, obtaining the firearm used, and scouting the location beforehand. During the trial, Rios maintained he wasn't present during the shooting, but the jury dismissed his defense. Despite his defense attorney's argument that the evidence against him relied solely on testimonies seeking reduced sentences, the discovery of weapons and ammunition in Rios's apartment after a police search strengthened the case. Nonetheless, the judge remained unconvinced by this defense strategy.
Because there are few, if any, comments, Mr. Rios, that I can think of that would carry the full weight and import of the sentence that I'm about to deliver. As Attorney Stam has, I believe, correctly noted, yours will not simply be a sentence for life, but a very difficult one in light of the facts underlying this particular case.
The verdict sentenced Rios to life in prison without any chance for parole. As the judgment echoed through the courtroom, Rios stayed silent, his hands cuffed behind his back. He appeared firm, facing the sentence stoically, maintaining an unflinching gaze ahead, devoid of facial reactions or even the slightest blink. As the judge concluded, Rios was escorted out of the courtroom, maintaining a composed demeanor. In 1992, a prominent crime syndicate leader faced trial at a Brooklyn, New York court, presided over by Judge Leo Glasser.
The Don is covered with Velcro, and every charge in the indictment stuck.
Quoting a New York FBI leader, John Gotti, a well-known mobster, had a reputation for navigating in and out of legal trouble until his arrest. His high-profile trial in 1992 centered on racketeering and murder charges. Gotti, also dubbed the Teflon Don, led the Gambino crime family in New York City from 1985 until his 1990 arrest. His criminal pursuits ranged from extortion, loan sharking, and gambling to murder. The prosecution's case hinged heavily on the testimony of former associates, notably Salvatore Gravano, an FBI informant. Gravano detailed his involvement in criminal activities with Gotti, implicating him in multiple murders, including ordering a hit on Castellano, another gangster. Despite initial signs of potential escape, Gotti's luck dwindled. The evidence against him proved difficult, resulting in convictions on all counts. The trial remained impartial, strengthened by a key witness close to the crime boss, and jurors were kept anonymous, identified solely by numbers. In 1992, Gotti received a life sentence without parole. While Gotti symbolized organized crime in the U.S., some in his community viewed him differently. Following his sentencing, Gotti declined to comment, but outside voices protested strongly, claiming a rigged trial and wrongful conviction.
Those jurors were biased. I feel they had a very rotten trial, an unfair trial. This is worse than Russia.
That whole trial stunk from the beginning. You know, when one of us is accused of cheating, we're just considered low life. Is that what it is? When the government is, it's okay. But you know something? You know something? I just have one thing to say, and I don't want you to bother me. This is your government, all you people. It's about time that you stood up and took it back. And don't you see what's happening? Take it back. It's yours. It's mine. But I don't want it.
Let's transport ourselves to Florida for the sentencing of Joseph Zeeler, an event that unveiled shocking moments within the courtroom. Zeeler's egregious actions trace back to May 1990, when 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her 32-year-old babysitter, Lisa Story, were tragically raped, assaulted, and suffocated in a Cape Coral apartment. It wasn't until 2016, 26 years later, that Zeeler was apprehended for these chilling cold case murders. The breakthrough occurred when investigators matched Zeeler's DNA to evidence from the crime scene, presenting an irrefutable case against him, leading to 2 charges of first-degree murder. Despite his arrest, Zeeler strongly maintained his innocence throughout the trial. However, the courtroom spectacle didn't end there. In a stunning turn of events that left everyone stunned, a heavily shackled Zeeler turned to violence once more. He deliberately struck his attorney, Kevin Shirley, with a forceful elbow blow, startling the onlookers. There was no apparent provocation. Zeeler seemingly chose violence without warning. Quickly restrained by court officers, he was swiftly escorted out of the room. Meanwhile, amidst this chaos, the attorney calmly resumed his seat as if unaffected. The judge, concerned, had to check in with the lawyer to ensure he was unharmed.
I'm caught. Really, are you okay?
I'm fine.
I'm relaxed. Don't cough. Relax.
I used to box. I've taken a lot better shots than that.
You tell him, but the gravity of the situation becomes even more apparent during one of Zeeler's cross-examinations, where he directed the derogatory term pig towards the mother of his 11-year-old victim.
Me a rapist and a murderer, so what? I can't write that. I mean, she called me a rapist and a murderer, and I'm calling her a pig for not washing her sheets.
Following a trial marked by emotional intensity and compelling arguments, the jury unanimously declared Zeeler guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The subsequent penalty phase witnessed keen deliberations, with 10 out of 12 jurors ultimately recommending the death sentence. Zeeler received the final verdict of death, yet his demeanor in court remained defiant. Despite overwhelming evidence, he steadfastly asserted his innocence, defiantly stating, "I have nothing to do with this. I maintain my innocence." Regrettably, his pleas fell on deaf ears, as the judge ruled that he had forfeited his right to live. Welcome to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at the Lynn County District Court, where Alexander Jackson, a 22-year-old former Iowa college student, faces 3 charges of first-degree murder for fatally shooting his father, mother, and sister in their northeast Cedar Rapids residence. The tragic incident occurred on June 15, 2021, when Jackson shot his 61-year-old father, Jan Jackson, his 68-year-old mother, Melissa Jackson, and his 19-year-old sister, Sabrina. As per the testimony presented, Jackson made a 911 call that day, reporting a break-in at his home, where he claimed he was shot in the foot by an intruder who had also shot another family member. Describing the alleged intruder as a black man in black clothing and green shoes, his call prompted an investigation. However, no evidence of forced entry was found, and nothing seemed stolen or displaced in the house. The police discovered John in the lower level with 5 gunshot wounds, Melissa in the master bedroom with 3 gunshot wounds, and Sabrina in her lower level bedroom adjacent to Alexander's room with 2 gunshot injuries. A medical examiner concluded that each victim succumbed to multiple gunshot wounds. Melissa's fatal injury, a close-range shot to the eye, stands out as an especially harrowing detail from the tragic incident. Jackson never confessed to the police about the murders of his family. During extended interviews at the hospital, while receiving treatment for a gunshot to his left foot, he consistently blamed an alleged intruder. Investigative records indicate that law enforcement harbored suspicions regarding several aspects of Jackson's narrative. The absence of any signs of forced entry or disruption in the home, coupled with their disbelief in Jackson's account of a struggle with the intruder over the gun, raised red flags. These revelations shocked friends, neighbors, and the community as Jackson, a college student and Eagle Scout with a clean record, faced charges that seemed inconsistent with his character. Former classmates and community members held vigils to honor the victims, both of whom, Alexander and Sabrina Jackson, were enrolled in the University of Iowa's College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the time of their tragic deaths. With circumstantial evidence at the forefront, gathering crucial evidence from the crime scene was key. First Assistant Lynn County Attorney Monica Slaughter led the prosecution, applauding Brandon Bosenberg, a former Cedar Rapids crime scene investigator. Bosenberg's role in collecting evidence included identifying Jackson's palm prints on the .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle used in the killings. Additionally, police possessed video evidence from doorbell cameras that failed to capture any intruder entering or leaving the Jackson residence around the time of the murders.
Him going to the extent of shooting himself in the foot in an attempt to blame these murders on and I will say it again, phantom burglar who did not exist in this case.
Slaughter emphasized the absence of evidence supporting Jackson's claim of an intruder or forced entry into the house, a crucial aspect in establishing Jackson as the perpetrator. Additionally, Slaughter highlighted the inconsistency in Jackson's description of the alleged assailant he claimed to have struggled with while trying to seize the gun from officers. She accurately detailed how each victim suffered multiple gunshots from varying distances, some at close range, deliberately intended to ensure their demise. Specifically, she described Jackson shooting his father as he descended the stairs, then proceeding to fire 2 more shots into his father's head while standing over him. His sister was discovered shot in her bed, and his mother was found deceased on the master bedroom floor. Furthermore, prosecutors highlighted Jackson's attempt to manipulate the crime scene and evidence by inflicting a gunshot wound to his foot in the bedroom. This effort to stage the scene further emphasized the prosecution's argument against Jackson's innocence.
Deaths of each of the decedents in this case were caused by multiple gunshot wounds. Each of those gunshot wounds fired from different distances. There was evidence in the record that the shots were fired from a distance, and then each of the decedents was shot up close and personal to ensure the death of the victims in this case, Jan, Melissa, and Sabrina Jackson.
In her concluding statement, Slaughter highlighted the profound impact these murders had on the community, underlining that such a triple homicide, particularly one involving the execution of an entire family by one of its members, hadn't occurred since the early 80s. She emphasized the gravity of the crime and urged for consecutive sentences, asserting that if such a heinous act didn't warrant it, perhaps no other crime would necessitate such a judgment. Jackson's attorney, Tyler Johnston, focused on the absence of concrete physical evidence, labeling the case as circumstantial and urging the jurors to question it, highlighting the lack of evidence that contradicted Jackson's account of the events. Johnston pressed on the prosecution's failure to establish a motive for the crime, asserting that Jackson had no discernible reason to harm his family. In a swift denial, Slaughter brought forth a potential motive: Jackson's financial strain and the pressure from his father to secure employment or move out. With minimal funds in his bank account, the question of money as a motive arose. She refuted the necessity to prove motive definitively, asserting that no reason could justify the brutal act of killing one's family. Initially, the defense sought a new trial, alleging juror misconduct based on a juror overhearing discussions about the case. However, the judge dismissed this motion, awaiting the jury's verdict. Ultimately, Alexander Jackson was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder, carrying a mandatory life sentence in Iowa. Due to the disturbing nature of the murders, the prosecution requested consecutive life sentences, emphasizing the brutality of the crime.
The nature and circumstances of each separate offense in this matter were abhorrent. The heinous, brutal nature of each of these homicides warrants the court imposing 3 consecutive life sentences.
The prosecution requested 3 consecutive life sentences without parole for Jackson, along with a restitution order of $450,000. Jackson remained stoic and showed no visible reaction when the verdict was announced.
Mr. Jackson is adjudicated to be guilty of 3 counts of murder in the first degree, contrary to Iowa Code Sections 701.7 and 707.2, Parent 1, Parent A, and judgment is entered accordingly. In each count, he is sentenced to be confined for the remainder of his life with no possibility of parole.
His legal team endeavored to shield him from media exposure within the courtroom. However, as deputies handcuffed him and escorted him out, he appeared to display a hint of emotion, perhaps tearing up slightly. Moving to Rhode Island for Matthew Komrowski's sentencing, Cranston police charged him with the murder of Shirley Donnelly and the subsequent arson at her Dyer Avenue apartment. The shocking details of the case left the community in disbelief. Allegedly, he killed her and set fire to cover his tracks. Cranston's chief of police, Colonel Marco Palombo, expressed profound shock and horror, labeling it as one of the most gruesome crimes he'd encountered in his 24-year career. Komrowski, with a lengthy criminal history including assault, theft, arson, and robbery, was arrested in Providence on Potters Avenue. Despite resisting briefly during the arrest, he was eventually apprehended. Shockingly, he had been released from correctional institutions just a day prior. The investigation initially focused on a reported arson at Riverbend Apartments on Dyer Ave. Shirley Donnelly's lifeless body was discovered in the fire-damaged bedroom of her apartment, prompting a shift from arson to homicide. Witnesses reported seeing Komrowski leaving the scene in the victim's vehicle just before the fire. Evidence revealed that Donnelly suffered not only fatal injuries, but also fell victim to the fire, an attempt by Komrowski to hide his heinous act. During court proceedings, Komrowski's demeanor was disturbing. Rather than showing indifference, he taunted the victim's family by suggesting they'd pay for his bail, displaying heartlessness in the face of the tragedy.
Yeah, I think our family's gonna help.
In this situation, emotions ran high in the courtroom, particularly for the victim's ex-husband, Raymond Donnelly. As Komrowski was being escorted out, Raymond Donnelly attempted to grab him, clearly provoked by something said during the proceedings. Court officials swiftly intervened, restraining Donnelly and preventing any physical altercation. While understandable given the circumstances, maintaining order in the courtroom is paramount for court officers. Family members, rightfully distraught over the pain inflicted on their family and the community, expressed their outrage at the situation, reflecting the deep anguish and anger caused by Komrowski's actions.
It was more than that, his rap sheet. It was arson, domestic, attempted murder, assault. It went on and on and on.
Komrowski's troubling behavior extended beyond the courtroom, reflected in his actions while in custody. Shockingly, he uploaded self-portraits and videos to Instagram from within Rhode Island's mental hospital, leaving many puzzled about his intentions and how he acquired a cell phone in such a facility. At the time of this video, Komrowski had not yet been sentenced. His mental fitness to stand trial was questioned in 2014, leading to regular evaluations every 6 months. However, in 2018, he was eventually deemed fit to proceed with trial. For the victim's family, all that remains is to allow the legal process to run its course while they wait for justice to be served. We're now heading to the Los Angeles County Superior Court for the sentencing of Heather Maxine Barron, aged 33, and her boyfriend, Kareem Leva, aged 37. Both faced charges of a severe nature in connection with the tragic passing of Heather's 10-year-old son, Anthony Avalos. It's unfathomable not just to end a life, but to subject someone you raised to such torment takes it to a different level. Anthony suffered prolonged emotional, physical, and mistreatment from his mother and her boyfriend, ultimately leading to his tragic demise. His body bore signs of severe and sustained harm, showcasing the distressing conditions he endured. During the investigation, troubling details surfaced, indications of prolonged mistreatment, injuries, harm, malnutrition, and dehydration. The neglect and mistreatment extended back to when he was just 6 years old. Despite multiple reports and alerts raised by concerned individuals, the system failed to intervene effectively, missing critical opportunities to protect Anthony. His final days were marked by relentless and brutal abuse, leaving a lasting impact on those who tried to save him. Anthony was brought to the hospital in critical condition, and despite efforts, he passed away the following day. The court found Kareem Leva responsible for the fatal abuse, with Heather Barron aiding and supporting his actions. Their claim that Anthony's injuries were self-inflicted was rejected by the judge, who noted their deliberate delay in seeking help. Heather Barron's defense, citing her past experiences as a reason for her inability to prevent this tragedy, was swiftly dismissed. The sentencing hearing was emotionally charged, with family members delivering heart-rending statements.
The life that Kareem and Heather took away from him. This isn't what Anthony deserved. All Anthony ever did was love and care for Heather and his siblings. And in a split second, Anthony was stabbed in the back. Being here, being in court, reading words that are in memory of Anthony is something I never wanted to do.
It's truly heart-wrenching to hear 8-year-old Matthew Barron, Anthony's cousin, share his impact statement, expressing how much he misses his cousin and recalling Anthony's vibrant and loving nature.
Dear Judge, my name is Matthew Barron. I am 8 years old and I miss my cousin Anthony. I was a baby when I last saw him. I wish I could remember all our time together, but all I have is pictures and stories that my family tells me. Anthony was an amazing company, full of life and love. He always played with me.
During the non-jury trial on March 7th, the judge found Heather Barron and her boyfriend guilty of first-degree murder and torture. Barron and Leva chose to waive a jury trial. In a detailed ruling spanning more than 50 pages, the judge emphasized that the evidence pointed clearly to both defendants, singling out Anthony as a victim of extreme cruelty.
Each defendant is ordered to serve life without the possibility of parole. In count 2, the court imposes a life sentence with a minimum term of 7 years.
The court sentenced Barron and Leva to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, they were ordered to pay $7,500 each in victims' compensation funds. Richard DeVries, reputedly the president of the Las Vegas Hells Angels, faced a significant legal situation when taken into custody on felony charges, notably including racketeering. His arrest occurred during a court hearing in October 2020, alongside 7 others, as they faced indictment on racketeering charges related to a May shooting incident on a Henderson highway. The charges included enhancements associated with promoting or aiding a criminal gang. Allegations ranged from conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and battery to discharging a firearm at or into an occupied structure. According to prosecutors, DeVries and other alleged Hells Angels members were involved in a May 29th incident on U.S. Highway 95 near Wagon Wheel Drive, where they reportedly opened fire, injuring 6 Vagos motorcyclists.
Know that a month back, about a month ago in San Bernardino, a Vago still did kill a Hells Angel.
During the investigation, prosecutors suspected that the gunfire might have been a retaliatory act following a San Bernardino shooting that led to the death of a Hells Angels motorcyclist. However, a Vagos member denied this assertion during a grand jury hearing in June, as per court transcripts. Over Memorial Day weekend, a group of bikers, including Hells Angels members, were on a ride through Arizona and northern Nevada. Evidence presented to the jury indicated that individuals associated with the Hells Angels were observed at a Henderson Harley-Davidson dealership shortly after the shooting incident. Additionally, police identified an anonymous witness who provided a video depicting 3 individuals, dressed in attire linked to the Hells Angels, approaching the Vagos group. One person appeared to be holding an object in their left hand just before gunfire erupted. Police found multiple bullet casings scattered over a mile along the highway. However, the police account didn't confirm whether the Vagos group had fired any shots or if all the reported injuries were gunshot related. 2 individuals were critically injured and hospitalized. During the initial court hearing, Judge David Gibson Sr. presumably addressed the proceedings, though the specific details of his statement weren't provided.
I believe that there is clear and convincing evidence that all of these defendants are a danger to the community.
The initial arrest included Richard DeVries, Stephen Allo, and Russell Smith, identified by prosecutors as prospects for the Hells Angels. Subsequently, the prospects were released from custody after posting bail set at $75,000 each. During the indictment, prosecutors accused the Las Vegas Hells Angels chapter of operating as a criminal syndicate for a period exceeding 3 years. They alleged that DeVries played a significant role in directing, overseeing, and funding the organization. Prosecutors further asserted that DeVries incited or directed violence, aiming to enhance his position within the Hells Angels hierarchy or to target members of the rival Vagos Motorcycle Club.
All the defendants in this case that are currently before Your Honor today have been charged with racketeering. The Hells Angels has been deemed by the Clark County Grand Jury to be a criminal syndicate.
The defense, at a later stage, provided their perspective on the case.
Angels Motorcycle Club has not been found by a jury in the state of Nevada to be a criminal gang.
Subsequently, District Judge Tierra Jones denied a motion to recall an arrest warrant for Richard DeVries. During the court proceedings, Jones ordered DeVries into custody, setting his bail at $250,000. DeVries, similar to most other Hells Angels members, displayed no visible emotion and appeared cooperative. There's been no report of bail being posted, indicating that he remains in detention indefinitely until his upcoming court appearance. The case in Los Angeles County involving Judge Martin Herskovitz centered on the Lopez Carpio brothers, charged with second-degree murder in the tragic killing of 18-year-old Kevin Orellana. The fatal incident occurred on January 23, 2013, during a violent altercation among students at Cleveland High School in Reseda, California. Sadly, the altercation led to Orellana's stabbing, resulting in his untimely death at the hands of the Lopez Carpio brothers. Authorities determined that the altercation was initiated by one of the Carpio brothers associated with a local street gang who mistakenly targeted Orellana, believing him to be a rival gang member. However, Orellana had no affiliation with any gang. His death was a tragic case of mistaken identity. Anthony Carpio used a knife to stab Orellana multiple times in critical areas fatally. Following the stabbing, the Carpio brothers fled the scene, but were apprehended by law enforcement later. After thorough investigations and a trial, both brothers were charged with second-degree murder. They faced trial together, and on October 31, 2019, a jury found them guilty of the crime. Throughout the trial, the brothers displayed a defiant and indifferent demeanor, offering no apologies or showing any remorse. They appeared relaxed, as if merely watching a movie unfold, despite being real-life perpetrators with the weight of their actions on their hands. The family of Kevin Orellana was present during the proceedings and issued an agonizing victim impact statement, read by Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney Scott Marcus.
As a parent, we plan to dance at their wedding, celebrate a promotion, look forward to possible grandchildren. The last thought we would ever have is that we will have to plan their funeral.
The court sentenced Anthony Carpio, who was 18 years old during the incident, to a prison term of 16 years to life. Michael Stephen Carpio, age 20 at the time of the incident, received a sentence of 15 years to life. They will not be eligible for parole until at least 2028. However, despite the gravity of their sentences, their demeanor suggested that the consequences held little meaning or impact for them. The Osceola County Courthouse saw the trial of 46-year-old Anthony Hott, charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of animal cruelty in the tragic killings of his wife, Megan Hott, along with their 3 children, Alec, Tyler, and Zoe. The family dog, Breezy, also fell victim to this horrendous act. Hott, driven by delusional beliefs about an impending apocalypse, committed these heinous murders, drugging his family with Benadryl, suffocating them, and leaving their bodies to decompose for 2 weeks in their celebration, Florida home near Disney World. Authorities discovered the decomposed bodies a month after the killings, when federal authorities and Osceola County Sheriff's deputies arrived to arrest Hott on insurance fraud charges linked to his physical therapy business. Concerns were raised about the family's disappearance just after Christmas 2019, leading family members to request a wellness check on their Florida home. Hott split his time between working in Connecticut and spending weekends in Florida with his family. When deputies went to the Celebration residence for the arrest related to insurance fraud, they encountered a harrowing and gruesome scene. Testimonies in court from Special Agent Michael Phelps and Forensic Supervisor Emily Sita revealed the disturbing nature of the discovery, with bodies that had become discolored, blackened, and bruised. Additionally, Hott's fingerprints were found on a bottle of cherry-flavored liquid Benadryl, a crucial piece of evidence presented during the trial.
You heard from the medical examiner, and you heard from the toxicologist, and you heard that all of the members of the defendant's family at the time of their death had diphenhydramine in their system, which is Benadryl.
The court heard from Special Agent Phelps that, during the authorities' search of the house, Hott was observed mumbling and informed the police that he had consumed the Benadryl in an attempt to end his own life. Reports indicated that Hott was in a weakened state, barely able to stand, and displaying signs of trembling. In subsequent police interviews following the tragic events, Hott confessed to the murders of his family as presented by the prosecutors in court. The jury heard how Hott described to investigators the sequence of events, admitting that he initiated the killings by suffocating Zoe as she slept, detailing that he held her down until she suffocated. Hott confessed that he similarly suffocated and stabbed his 2 sons. He also admitted to choking the family dog. These horrifying details were part of the prosecution's review of Hodd's confessions during the trial.
Ultimately, the defendant takes a pillow and puts it over Megan's head until she dies.
The jury deliberated for over 6 hours before reaching a verdict, finding Anthony Hott guilty of 4 counts of murder and 1 count of animal cruelty in the tragic 2019 deaths of his wife Megan, children Tyler, Alexander, and Zoe, as well as their family dog Breezy. Shortly after the jury's decision, the sentencing took place.
As to count 1, first-degree murder of Zoe Elizabeth Tote, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As to count 2, for the premeditated murder of your son, Alexander John Tote, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As to count 3, for the premeditated murder of your son, Tyler John Tote, you are sentenced to life in prison. As to count 4, for the premeditated murder of your wife, Megan Denise Tote, you are sentenced to life in prison.
As the sentencing was announced, life in prison with no possibility of parole, Hott reacted by clasping his hands to his mouth and subtly shaking his head. He was escorted out of the courthouse by court officers, signifying the end of his freedom.